everybody, welcome back to my channel. Are you ready for part 2 in the next 3 chapters of Little Women? It will be chapter 4 to chapter 6. I will timestamp the chapters in the description box below in case you need to stop and come back, or if you want to jump ahead a little bit. So if you need to know what time each chapter starts, go down below into the description box. If not, we'll get right to it with chapter number 4. First one in the second series. This chapter, chapter 4, is called Burdens and Blessings. "Oh dear, it is so hard to go back to our duties," sighed Meg the morning after the party. The holidays were over now. "I wish it was Christmas or New Year's all the time. Wouldn't it be fun?" answered Joe, yawning. We wouldn't enjoy ourselves half as much, but it does seem so nice to go to parties, read and rest and not work," said Meg. Everyone seemed rather out of sorts that morning. Beth had a headache and lay on the sofa, trying to comfort herself with the cat and 3 kittens. Amy was fretting because she hadn't learned her school lessons, and she couldn't find her boots. Joe whistled and made a great racket getting ready. Miss March was very busy trying to finish a letter, and Hannah had the grumps. There never was such a cross family," cried Joe. She had just upset an ink strand, broken both boot strings, and sat down upon her hat. "You're the crossest person in it," said Amy. Girls, do be quiet 1 minute," cried Miss March. "Goodbye, Marmee," called out Joe. "We may be rascals this morning, but we'll come home angels tonight. Come on, Meg." Joe and Meg left together for their jobs. Joe went off to tend old Aunt March, and Meg to be governess to the King children. They looked back at the corner, for their mother was always at the window waving. Meg had a small salary as a governess. She tried not to be envious, but she did wish for pretty things and a happy life. At the King's, she saw the older sisters' dainty ball dresses and bouquets. She had heard lively gossip about theaters, concerts, singing, and parties. Meg did not complain much, but she was often bitter. She had not yet learned to know how rich she was in the blessing of home and family. There's Meg being a governess to the children. Joe happened to suit old Aunt March, who was lame and needed an active person to wait upon her. This did not suit Joe at all, but she got on very well thanks to a large library of fine books at Aunt March's house. Joe's greatest regret was that she couldn't read, run, and ride as much as she liked. A quick temper, sharp tongue, and restless spirit were always getting her into scraps. Beth was too bashful to go to school. She had tried, but suffered so much that it was given up. She did her lessons at home. She helped Hannah keep the home neat and comfortable. She was not lonely, for her world was filled with dolls, and she was by nature a busy bee. But she had her troubles as well. She longed very much to take piano lessons and have a fine piano. If anybody had asked Amy to name her greatest trial, she would have answered at once, "My nose." It was rather flat. Amy wanted a classic straight nose and drew whole sheets of handsome ones. She had a talent for drawing. She could also play 12 tunes, croquet, and read French without saying more than half of the words wrong. But things were seldom nice enough to please Amy. She was on her way to being a very spoiled little girl. There's old Aunt March and Joe. The 2 older girls took the younger sisters under their wings. Meg was Amy's closest friend, and Joe was gentle Beth's. As the girls sat sewing that evening, Meg said, "Has anybody got anything to tell? It's been such a dismal day. I'm really dying for some amusement." "I had a hard time with Aunt today," began Joe. "She is always so serious and never lets herself have any fun. What a pleasant life she might have if only she chose. I don't envy her much in spite of her money." Meg said, "At the King's today, I found everybody in a flurry. I was glad I didn't have any wild brothers to embarrass the family." "I think being disgraced in school is a great deal worser than anything bad boys can do," said Amy. Susie Perkins came to school today with a lovely red ring. I envied her so much, till she got in trouble for drawing a picture of the teacher, and he took her by the ear. By the ear! Just imagine how horrid. I didn't envy her then. Beth said, I saw Mr. Lawrence in the fish shop, but he didn't see me. He bought some fish for a poor woman who hadn't any dinner for her children. Wasn't it good of him? So I've been sitting around chatting as they're sitting. Tell a story, Mother. One with a moral to it. I like to think about them afterward, said Joe. Miss March smiled and began at once. Once upon a time, there were 4 girls. They had enough to eat and drink and wear. They had been kind friends and parents who loved them dearly. But they were not happy. These girls were anxious to be good, but were constantly saying, if only we had this, or if only we did that. They were always forgetting how much they already had and how many things they actually could do. So they asked an old woman what spell they could use to make them happy. She said, when you feel unhappy, think over your blessings and be grateful. So they agreed to stop complaining. They promised to enjoy their blessings and tried to deserve them. And I believe they were never disappointed or sorry that they took the old woman's advice. We'll get right into chapter number 5. Take a break if you need to. Okay, chapter number 5 is called Being Neighborly. A garden with a low hedge separated the Marches' house from that of Mr. Lawrence. On one side was an old brown house. It was rather shabby, without the vines and flowers that covered its walls in summer. On the other side was a stone mansion with a big coach house and neat lawns. Lovely things could be seen between the rich curtains. Yet it seemed a lonely sort of house. No children played on the lawn. Few people went in and out. To Jo, this fine house next door seemed an enchanted place. She had long waited to see its glories and to know the Lawrence boy. She had not seen him since the party. That boy needs to have fun, Jo said to herself as she walked by. His grandpa does not know what's good for him and keeps him shut up all alone to study. She saw Mr. Lawrence drive off. A curly black head was leaning on a thin hand at the upper window. There he is, thought Jo. Poor boy, all alone and looking sick to stims all day. I'll toss up a snowball and make him look out. Up went a handful of soft snow, and the window opened at once. Jo looked as she called out, How do you do? Are you sick? Lori leaned out and croaked, Better, thank you. I've had a bad cold and been shut up a week. It's dull up here. Isn't there some nice quiet girl who would amuse you? Don't know any. You know us? Laughed Jo. I'm not quiet and nice, but I'll come. Soon enough, Jo appeared with a covered dish in one hand and Beth's 3 kittens in the other. What a cozy room this is, said Jo, looking around. It only needs to have the hearth brushed and things straightened on the mantel. The books should be put here, and the pillows plumped a bit. Now then, you're fixed. And so he was, for as she laughed and talked, Jo had tidied the room. How kind you are, Lori said gratefully. Now please let me do something to amuse you. No, I came to amuse you. Shall I read aloud? And Jo looked toward some books nearby. Thank you, but I'd rather talk, said Lori. I'll talk all day if you set me going. Beth says I never know when to stop. Is Beth the rosy one who stays at home a good deal? Asked Lori with interest. There's Lori peeking out the window. Yes, that's Beth. The pretty one is Meg, and the curly-haired one is Amy. How did you find that out? Lori blushed. Well, I'm alone up here. I can't help looking over at your house. You always seem to be having such good times. It's like looking at a picture to see you all around the table with your mother. I haven't got any mother, you know. And Lori poked the fire to hide a little twinging of the lips that he could not control. The lonely look in his eyes went straight to Joe's warm heart. Lori was sick and lonely. Feeling how rich she was in home and happiness, Jo gladly tried to share it with him. "I wish you'd come over and see us," she said. "Mother would do you heaps of good, and Beth would sing to you, and Amy would dance. Meg and I would make you laugh, and you'd have jolly times. Wouldn't your grandpa let you?" "I think he would, if your mother asked him. He's very kind, though he does not look so," Laurie said. "You see, Grandpa lives among his books. Mr. Brooke, my tutor, doesn't stay here, and I have no one to go around with, so I just stay home." "You ought to go visiting. Then you'll have plenty of friends," said Joe. Laurie offered to give Joe a tour of the house. He led the way from room to room until at last they came to the library. It was lined with books, and there were pictures and statues and a great open fireplace. "What richness!" sighed Joe, for she loved books. "Laurie, you ought to have that. You ought to be the happiest boy in the world." There's the library. To Joe, that was like the best place on earth. Laurie excused himself for a moment to see the doctor who had just arrived. Joe stood looking at the portrait of Mr. Lawrence. "I'm sure I wouldn't be afraid of him," she said out loud. "He's got kind eyes. He isn't as handsome as my grandfather, but I like him." "Thank you, ma'am," said a gruff voice behind her. There, to her great dismay, stood old Mr. Lawrence. Poor Joe blushed, and her heart began to beat fast. The old gentleman was a gruffy. "So you're not afraid of me, eh?" "Not much, sir." He gave a short laugh and shook her hand. "You've got your grandfather's spirit. He was a brave, honest man. I was proud to be his friend." "Thank you, sir," said Joe, who was quite comfortable after that. "What have you been doing to this boy of mine?" was the next question. "You think he needs cheering up a bit, do you?" "Yes, sir. He seems a little lonely. Young folks would do him good. We're glad to help, for we don't forget the splendid Christmas present you sent us," said Joe. Sorry, there's Joe and Mr. Lawrence. Laurie returned, and Mr. Lawrence noticed the change in his grandson as he talked and laughed with Joe. There was color, light, and life in the boy's face now. The girl was better than the doctor. "She's right, the lad is lonely. I'll see what these little girls can do for him," thought Mr. Lawrence. They walked into the great drawing room. Joe noticed at once the grand piano. "Do you play?" she asked, turning to Laurie. "I want to hear it so I can tell Beth." Laurie played, and Joe listened. She wished Beth could hear him. She told Laurie how beautifully he played and praised him so much that he blushed. "That will do, young lady," interrupted the old man. "His music isn't bad, but I hope he will do as well in more important things." "Going? I hope you'll come again. My respects to your mother. Good night, Dr. Joe." He shook hands kindly, but looked as if something did not please him. When they got into the hall, Joe asked Laurie if she had said something wrong. He shook his head. "No, it was me. He doesn't like to hear me play. Someday I'll tell you why. Thank you for coming." "Well, take care, Laurie. Good night," said Joe. "Good night, Joe. Good night." Laurie was playing. When Joe had told her mother and sisters all about her visit with the neighbors, the family wished to go visiting at once. Miss March wanted to talk with the old gentleman because he had known her father. Meg longed to walk in the greenhouse. Beth sighed for the grand piano. Amy was eager to see the fine pictures and statues. "Mother, why didn't Mr. Lawrence like to have Laurie play the piano?" asked Joe. His son, Laurie's father, married an Italian lady. Mr. Lawrence did not approve of her, even though she was a fine musician. He never saw his son after he married. They both died when Laurie was a little child. Laurie is like his mother and loves music. Perhaps his grandfather fears he may want to become a musician. At any rate, Laurie's skills must remind him of the woman he did not like. "How silly," said Joe. "Let him be a musician if he wants to." That's the end of Chapter 5. We'll get right into Chapter 6. If you need a break, take one now. Maybe. Okay, the last chapter for Part 2 is Chapter 6, called Beth's Piano Lesson. The new friendship flourished like grass. Grass? My goodness. I have Christmas brains. Let's try this again, kids. The new friendship flourished like grass in spring. Everybody liked Laurie, and and he told his tutor, Mr. Brooke, that the Marches were splendid girls. What good times they had! Plays, sleigh rides, and skating parties. They had pleasant evenings in the Marches' old parlor and little gatherings at the Lawrences' great house. Meg walked in the greenhouse whenever she liked. Joe browsed over the new library. Amy copied pictures and enjoyed beauty to her heart's content. Only Beth did not have the courage to visit. She went once with Joe, but the old gentleman stared at her so hard that she ran away. But then Mr. Lawrence mended matters. During one of his visits, he started talking about Laurie's piano lessons and their grand piano. Beth found it impossible to stay in her distant corner. He said to Miss March, "Wouldn't some of your girls like to practice on the piano now and then, ma'am?" Here he rose as if to leave. A little hand slipped into his, and Beth looked up at him and said, "Oh, sir, they would, very, very much." "Are you the musical girl?" he asked. He looked down at her kindly. "I'm Beth. I love music dearly. I'll come, if you are quite sure nobody will be disturbed." "The house is empty half the day, so come as much as you like. I'll leave the side door open." Beth gave the hand a grateful squeeze. The old gentleman kissed her cheek, saying softly, "I had a little girl once with eyes like these." "God bless you, my dear." He went away in a great hurry. Next day, Beth made her way like a mouse to the side door of the Lawrences' house and into the drawing room. Quite by accident, of course, some easy music lay on the piano. With trembling fingers, Beth touched the keys. She immediately forgot everything but the happiness the music gave her. After that, Beth played nearly every day. She never knew that Mr. Lawrence opened his study door to hear the music. She never knew Laurie warned the servants away. She never suspected that the new music she found on the piano was put there for her. She simply enjoyed herself, and because she was so grateful for this blessing, a greater blessing was given to her. So they knew that she was shy, and they didn't want anyone to disturb her, and they left music out for her. That's cute. Beth made Mr. Lawrence some slippers as a thank you gift. Several days passed after she and Laurie snuggled into the study, but the old gentleman had said nothing about them. Then, one afternoon, Beth went out to do an errand. On her return, she saw 4 heads popping in and out of the parlor windows. Several hands waved, and joyful voices screamed, "Here's a letter from the old gentleman! Come quick and read it!" At the door, her sisters pulled her inside. Beth turned pale with delight and surprise. There stood a little piano with a letter laying on the glossy lid. "From me?" gasped Beth, holding it to Joe. "You read it. I can't. Oh, it's too lovely." Joe opened a paper and read, "Dear Madame, I've had many pairs of slippers in my life, but never any I like as much as yours. They will always remind me of you. I'm sending you something which once belonged to the little granddaughter I lost. With hearty thanks and best wishes, James Lawrence." He gave her a piano so she could play at home. That's beautiful. "You have to go and thank him." "And Joe," said Joe, "but I think I need some coffee or something. I don't even drink coffee, but I need to wake up." "I have to go and thank him," said Joe, but she was joking. She knew that shy Beth would never be able to face the old gentleman. "Yes, I guess I'll go now before I get frightened," Beth said. And then, to her family's surprise, she boldly walked next door to the Lawrences' house. They would have been still more amazed if they had seen what Beth did afterward. She knocked at the study door, went right up to Mr. Lawrence, and held out her hand. Remembering that he had lost his little girl he loved, she put both arms around his neck and kissed his cheek. Beth ceased to fear Mr. Lawrence at that moment. She learned that love is more powerful than fear. That's the end of chapter 6. Tomorrow I will do 6 more chapters for you. The story is just getting juicy and just getting good, so come back. We'll read better next time and be more awake. I love you all kids. Be good out there. Love and light. Listen to your parents. Don't get into any trouble. Okay? See you next time.